evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another DevOps Live meetup. My name is Mike Rosato. I'm going to be your host today, and I got a few announcements before bringing on our guest speaker. Basically, I want to let everybody know that DevOps Days Dallas was postponed to August. We're going to begin, start the organization talks in March. So we're still kind of in a pending stage because we don't know if the Plano Event Center is going to be available to us or what's going on. So we're going to have some talks with them and start organizing if that's possible. So keep an eye on the website. It's devopsdays.org. You'll also see that this month in March, on March 2nd and 3rd, there's going to be a DevOps Days Texas virtual, and it's a combination of organizers from Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. Austin, Dallas, and Houston. And these organizers came together to just keep the momentum going of DevOps Days. So it's free to attend. You can register online at devopsdays.org. And also the call for papers is still available. It's open until January 31st. So you still have a few days to submit a presentation for a call for papers. Also, I wanted to let everybody know that if you want to hear a lot more talks, there's a lot more DevOps Days happening around the world virtually. So, go check them out at devopsdays.org and check and see which country or city you want to attend virtually. And you have a lot of good speakers out there that are submitting talks, and you could do a lot of learning from that. As well, on October 28th, if you haven't had enough of DevOpsDays.org talks, on October 28th is the annual all-day DevOps that is happening virtually as well. And it's a full 24 hours of speakers from around the world talking. This is their fifth anniversary t-shirt that they put out. So, go check it out. It's also free. And again, you don't have to attend the full 24 hours. Just go ahead and register and then attend the talks, that you're most interested in. And whatever you couldn't attend, you could always go back and watch them later. So let me go ahead and bring in, I have Tim Davis. Let's see here. Hey, Tim, How you doing today?
Good. How are you, Mike?
Doing great. So tonight we have Tim Davis from M0, if I got that correct.
That's
M0.
the one.
Yeah, and he's going to be talking to us about, let's see here. He's going to be talking to us about DevOps and how developers can take they can take advantage of infrastructure as code in deploying things faster. So go ahead. I'll let you introduce and give a little bit more introduction about yourself, Tim. And, you could also follow him. He's on Twitter and he's on LinkedIn. So, yeah, follow him. He has a lot of stuff to share with you. Let me go ahead and bring up the slides here. And I'll leave it over to you, Tim.
Sounds great. Thanks, Mike. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining, whether you're live or checking it out later. Appreciate that. Hopefully everybody stonks did well today. So today we're going to talk about speeding up development using infrastructure as code and dynamic environments. So a little bit about me here. I currently am the DevOps Advocate for M0. We are a tiny Israeli startup company. Been around for about 18 months or so, but I've been on board here for roughly 3 months, I think. And I am the only U.S. employee. It's a very engineering-heavy company. We have a really great team on board, including an awesome CEO who still holds the title for the youngest person hired for Microsoft in Israel as a developer. So everybody's real tech strong. We really like it, and we seem to be doing a lot of really great things. Before that, I actually came from VMware, where I was part of the Cloud and Developer Advocacy program. And before that, I was a pre-sales SE in the networking and security business unit. Before there, I was a consultant and virtualization architect over at Dell Technologies. And I've worked through several different data centers and other local things. I pretty much come from the systems side of the house in my past lives. And I think that kind of gives me a good feel of what infrastructure is doing, where it's going. And also, because of having been an architect, I've been really focused on the application specific side, what the applications need, because really you're not just delivering infrastructure for the sake of infrastructure, you're delivering it to deploy the app. So that's always important. So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to talk about kind of the old way versus the new way, Terraform, infrastructure as code modeling, dynamic environments, managing that. Q&A, feel free to ask any questions you have at any point in time. At the end here, after I'm done with the slides, I don't have a ton of those. I'm going to show you a demo of the M0 platform, but I want to make sure that you know that I'm not just showing you something that you have to use our product for. I would like you to use our product for it, but really the concepts that we're going to talk about today translate across pretty much any kind of infrastructure as code tooling that you'd like to use. So the key terms that we're talking about today here is static environments and dynamic environments. Static environments is kind of the regular way people know, in the past about doing labs. You would have your development environment and you would have your production environment. Development was generally a either one-to-one build of the entire hardware set, maybe sometimes a little cut down, in terms of resources, but really it was a complete build. You couldn't just go out and cookie cutter it and rebuild it over and over and over again. Dynamic environments are temporary environments that are just built when you need them for a short amount of time, then they're burned away. This can really speed things up in the way that instead of having to rebuild an environment, you have multiple people that want to make, changes at the same time that might mess with the other person. In a static environment, that could cause issues. Or you have to have multiple entire stacks of the static environment to do that. So it's not really the most agile way of doing things. And with DevOps, we all know that we need to move faster, kind of kick things to the next gear. And really, dynamic environments is the best way of doing that. So application these days have gotten more complex. I'm sure you've seen a version of this slide 60,000 times, but it's really important. Applications back in the day, you had your 3-tier architectures. They were real siloed monoliths. Everything was kind of in a big stack. These days, with cloud native architecture, with Kubernetes architecture and things like that, it's really kind of made things a lot more complex. Especially with the microservice architecture with cloud native, you really got so many different pieces that are in the mix and plugged together. It's really become more complex to build these out. Now, developers are starting to deploy infrastructure the way that they code. They're actually writing out this infrastructure in a piece of code and deploying that out. That's really moving away from the old, what's called ClickOps model of, going into AWS or what have you, right-clicking on a template, spinning up a VM and doing what you need to do. These days, they're going through and there's multiple different ways you can do that. There's declarative infrastructure and imperative infrastructure as code. Declarative just kind of says, this is what it's supposed to look like in the end. And then the tool goes and builds it out whatever way it sees fit. And then, of course, there's imperative infrastructure as code, where it's kind of like a script where it just goes step by step by step through whatever the plan is to get that done. The developers are doing this because it speaks their language. They're speaking in code. They don't necessarily want to go into a UI and click around to get what they need. They just want to access an API or what have you and, go on their way. And that's really what's pushing the infrastructure as code model. There's lots of different infrastructure as code these days. Most people know Terraform. That seems to be the big winner. there's Terraform, there's the newer model of Pulumi, which is getting more and more traction these days. I think that's going to get really, really huge this year, simply because Terraform uses its own language of HCL. So you kind of have to figure that out on top of the code that you're building for your application. And Pulumi doesn't. Pulumi is using the code that you're already using. You want to build it in Go, you want to build it in Python, what have you. Great. You can do that in order to access their framework to build the infrastructure that you need for that. But really, a lot of folks are going that direction for code instead of going through and looking at that, cloud UI and building out everything that they need to do. So how can we do that now? On a dedicated model here, you're looking at a developer on their local machine. They're creating PRs. They've got end-to-end tested of dedicated infrastructure. And on shared models, you're going through and you're using shared Git repositories and things like that to merge to main. Really, the big thing with that is if you're using dynamic environments in a dedicated space, you've got all of your different developers that are running the Terraform plans, running the Pulumi plans or what have you on their local machines. Now, this can be just fine. The problem is when you start to scale that across multiple people in a team, you can start to lose visibility. You're not sure who ran what kind of environment variables they had in on it, how long the infrastructure is going to be up. So it can be difficult from a team to kind of know who's doing what and where and when. On the shared model, you can actually look through and see who's doing that, why they're doing that, if they've used any variables or anything like that that make things different. Now, dynamic environments, we talked about that already a little bit. It really gives you the flexibility to kind of move forward in how you're developing. Now, there's multiple different ways that you can utilize dynamic environments. You can give each developer their own environment for each task that they do. You could use per pull request environments where every pull request that's created on the Git repository, that code goes and spins up a new environment. Every time you make a commit to that code, it updates that environment. All of that is a copy of production, but it's secluded off so that it's not actually going through and bothering your production environment or anything like that. Now, it's a good clone of that. In order to get there, infrastructure as code is a really big piece of that, simply because if you've got an application or an architecture where somebody has to go out to AWS and create an EC2 instance, create a Kubernetes cluster, give it a database, connect this, install the application, configure the networking. That can be a really difficult task. And if you're spinning up the environments and then tearing down the environments for every PR or for each developer, that can really take up a lot of time. It can take up a lot of resources. If you're templatizing your application into infrastructure as code, then you can actually go through and just rubber stamp that application out over and over and over with the automation. So that's really where the infrastructure as code is becoming key to speeding up that development, especially with the dynamic environments. If you're going to be building it up and tearing it down once a day, twice a day, once a week, what have you. If it takes time to manually build that application infrastructure, you're just going to end up where it's one person's entire job to spin up development environments and configure them. If you've got infrastructure as code where you just say, I need it to look like this, you tell Terraform to apply and go, you're done. It takes a little bit, a few minutes to build the resources, configure it. You get your outputs from Terraform. They get their little URL that they connect to for their environment, and they're good to go. So it really, really helps and saves time and speeds up that development process. Because say you deploy an environment, you make a Git commit with some bad code, and it nukes the environment. That's bad. You don't necessarily want to have to go and manually rebuild that. You don't want to go through and cause any issues with anybody else that may have been using that environment. With infrastructure as code, you can simply go, I don't want to do that. You go through, you roll your commit back, or you commit back on top of it. You spin up the new environment, and you're good to go again. It really allows you to fail faster and then make sure that you can get what you need out the door and ship that code on time. Now, managing these dynamic environments, it really helps if you have a tool. We, of course, are one of these tools. So Eric that runs the SuiteOps office hours for online, he created this term of tacos, and that's Terraform automation and collaboration software, and that's really what we do. You can download and run Terraform on your laptop, no problem. But like we talked about a little bit ago, you can start to lose visibility across different members on the same team. If you're spinning up a bunch of different environments, who's spinning up environments, who's allowed to spin up environments. That's really where the software comes into play, of making sure that you have the visibility across all of your team members, all of your environments, and things like that. Now, there's lots of different folks that are in this space at this point. M0 is one of them. Terraform Cloud is obviously a big one. Scalar and Pulumi. Oh, yes, I can provide a copy of the slides there. No problem. Sorry about that. I know in the screenshots here, you can kind of see it's a little hard to see. I'll show you this screen in a demo in a little bit, so you can kind of see exactly what that looks like. And again, when we show you the demo of M0, you can use our software if you want, but that's also that concept kind of scales across any of the different types of places you might want to be for that. So where to learn more about us specifically, m0.com/blog is where a lot of our stuff is. You can follow me at VTimD on Twitter, at MZERO for us on Twitter for the company as well. But really, there's lots of folks out there following, on Twitter. I think that's one of the most helpful places I've ever been in terms of finding answers, meeting people that are alike, having good conversations. If anybody isn't on there, I highly recommend it at this point. I was at a user group many years back and was told, join Twitter. Tech Twitter is big. I didn't really see the use at the time, but it really is a great resource for getting to know people, catching up with people, getting answers to questions you may have, finding resources. There's lots of folks out there. Follow the hashtags of, hashtag DevOps, hashtag Terraform, hashtag IAC, and also even DevOps Days accounts and things like that, because a lot of those folks like Mike are retweeting things that aren't necessarily DevOps Days specific. They're going through and saying, hey, this is relevant to the industry, and going out there and doing that. And I believe also DevOps Live has one as well. Awesome. Does anybody have any other questions or anything like that as of right now? All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing for this for a second. Mike, I need to switch to a different tab.
Sure, not a problem.
Let me use the same tab. Let me find out. Okay. Well, let me use the same tab. Okay.
It did? Okay, let's bring it up.
There we go.
There we go.
All right. So this is the M0 product. Let me move this over so I can see questions if they come up. And with this, we're very focused on the user experience at this current point in time. We really want it to be easy. So getting in and going from having nothing to creating an organization and deploying your first project is something that we're really interested in. The platform is currently free to use. We do have some pricing on the website, but we are early, and really the biggest thing that we're looking for right now is feedback. So if anybody's interested in taking it for a spin, and specifically, I like it when you try to break things. Please do come in, see what happens when you push this button, or if you do something you're not supposed to. We're definitely in to find any of the issues and stuff that we can, or if the experience isn't great. So to show you this, we're kind of laid out like a lot of the other people like us. The main organization is the top level structure for us. And with that, your organization could be a team, it could be a company, it could be a what have you. You can have as many organizations as you want. The next level under that is projects. And then you have environments, which are your specific deployments. When we say an environment, we mean you took your Terraform code or your TerraGrunt code, and you deployed an environment with that. Now, you could have the same application and you could have it deployed 15 times, and those are 15 different environments. So we're not necessarily meaning one specific application, we're meaning an instance of that application. So that's kind of the nomenclature. We do use our own application to run our own application. So our application is a React front end, and it's got a bunch of duct tape, baling wire, and Lambda functions in the background, all going to an API gateway. And our front end is deployed using our app. So if we actually come and we look here, we have a project of M0 Frontend Deploy prod. This has 2 active environments, and the weekly cost is $62.57. Now, we have the ability to go through and tag resources for you on your deployments so that we can say, this is an EC2 instance, this is that, this is that. Then we'll go back through and parse your billing and say, this is how much that's costing you, that specific deployment is costing you per week, per month, or what have you. On top of the role-based access control that we have, it really gives you a good handle on who's able to deploy applications, where they're able to deploy applications, and things like that. So if we go into our front-end deploy here, we can see prod and then our Redis bastion. So for our prod, this is our application. This is going through, and this is what's running the front end that we're using right now. We have the ability to go through and do per PR as well. So all of our developers actually can go through, and for every pull request we have open right now for a feature, we have an entire instance of our application deployed. This way they can go through and test the code, make sure everything works. Somebody who's working on one feature doesn't, cause problems for anybody else's features. And this is really the power of dynamic environments. This is the illustration of exactly what that is. We've got, PR 2991. This coincides with that PR on GitHub. Every time something is committed to this PR, we're going to go through and we're going to make a pull request plan. So we're going to say, are there any infrastructure changes with this Terraform plan? And then we're going to go through and deploy that all the way through so that they can see and run QA on all of their updates. As soon as this PR is closed, this environment's going to be completely torn down and gotten rid of. Now, this does allow you, or this does have a bunch of different environments spun up at once. But really, we're kind of giving you the guardrails that you need to keep an eye on that. So with that weekly cost, you can kind of see how much that's costing you. We also have a environment limit TTL policy, or environments limit policy, so that you can go through and say each user is only allowed to deploy, say, 3 environments at once. This way you don't have a user that's deploying 10, 20, 30 environments and has a lot of sprawl and is costing a lot of money. We also have the TTL policy, so the time to live policy for environments. So you can actually come through and say users are able to deploy their 3 environments. By default, it's only going to be alive for 24 hours, and then we're going to run the Terraform destroy on it. And with that, you can go through and say they only have a day, max a week, or you can say they have max a month. So if the user goes in and they still need some more time, they can go through and extend that TTL and then allow them to have that, environment a little longer. With that TTL, it really helps you to kind of cut down on sprawl so that when you deploy out all these dynamic environments, you don't leave them out there and forget until the AWS bill comes in at the end of the month. We all know that the AWS bill is never a good thing to look at sometimes. And if you're not keeping track of what's deployed and how long it's deployed, sometimes that can get a little out of hand. So if we look here, we've got quite a bit of environments that are actually deployed now. We've got quite a few features coming down. Our guys work extremely quickly. They're extremely efficient. It's really a great team to work with. Now, if we come through, let's take a look at some of the settings here. So we have users and teams management. And this is really where the power of these tacos software, now I told you the nomenclature of earlier here, really comes in. So this is allowing you to kind of set through all of your team members and say, what role do they have? Now with this, in this section here for an organization, they can either be just a user or an admin. If you go into the actual project settings, this is where you come through and you have a little bit more granular control on your RBAC. So we can come through and say either viewer, planner, deployer, or admin. And with this, those actually coincide with the Terraform constructs. With viewer, they're allowed to just look at the project and see what's happening. planner, they're actually able to go through and run the TerraGrunt or Terraform plan to say, what is this going to do? How many resources is this going to add, change, or destroy? But they're not actually able to approve so that it goes through and does that Terraform apply. Then we have deployer. This is somebody who's actually able to view, they're able to run plans, and then they're actually able to go through and run that deployment. So they can say, set up a group of people where these people can only run plans, but these 3 people who are the admins or the DevOps team, they can actually approve those deployments to be pushed out. And then, of course, we have admins, which have full access to everything, as well as user management. And with this, we can do individual users or we can do teams. And we have all of that different control with what our team can be. So you can have that as viewer, planner, deployer, admin. We have lots of folks that are setting their RBAC for their, their centralized Terraform runs with, this is application A's group. They can do whatever they want in that project with application A. This group is application B. They can do whatever they want with application B. We also have some folks that are set up where these are my developers. They only have planner stage. These are my DevOps engineers. They have access to, approve. And so they've got deployer access. So it really kind of depends on how you want to set that up and what works best with your organization for if you're going to, set up those dynamic environments, set policies for what they're going to do. Now, with our policies in the project settings, we can do max number of environments per user, or we can approve plans automatically based for new environments. If you're going to do RBAC where you need a separate approval chain, then you definitely don't want to check that box because then by default, it'll automatically approve. And we also have notifications. So if you're doing dynamic environments, that's something that you're going to need to make sure that your tool does or that your workflow has, is that you're paying attention to what's happening in the environment. Now with ours, we can come through and we've got 8 out of 8 here. So we can do a deploy start, a destroy start, deploy, destroy, finished, waiting for approval, plan, canceled, destroy, deploy, approved, and environment will shut down to TTL. So really with this, anything that's happening in the environment, we're going to get a notification in our Slack channel telling us so-and-so is deploying this template and they're doing this. It's waiting for approval. If you're a deployer or a planner, then you can go through and check that and see what's happening. If you do have the rights to do it, you can go ahead and click approve on that workflow and push it through. So that's definitely something that adds a layer of visibility. With us, you can do Slack. We also have Teams integration as well, and that's M0 specific. But really, again, like I said, a lot of these things that I'm showing you is something that is in our tool, but doesn't necessarily mean that it's only for our tool. If you use anything else, it's just something to keep an eye on for making sure that your workflows, you have visibility into them. You've got the control over who's doing what and what have you. Now, if we go through and look at our organization settings here, we have the same thing from an organization level of those users and teams, but the difference here is going to be our policy for an organization level. With this, we only have the TTL. This is where you set that default and maximum of how long that environment's going to live. For us, anything from 12 hours, 1 day, 3 days, week, month, what have you. So you can set that so that it automatically puts that into the project when people are deploying. Us by default usually is about 3 days and stuff like that for some of our other projects. But really, with some of the developer stuff, that's infinite. You can make that whatever you need so that you keep track of all that sprawl of all of those new environments. When you have static development environments, it's kind of easy to know what's deployed where because you only have 1 copy or 2 copies or what have you. Dynamic environments can really get out of hand when you give so many people access to just cookie cutter out their environment every time they need it. So from a DevOps perspective, you really need to keep an eye on that and make sure you're really keeping track of what's happening in your environment so that you're not paying for things that you don't need to pay for. You don't have a bunch of resources that are out there that you don't need that could cause, security issues or anything like that. So that's definitely something you should keep an eye on. And that's actually all I had, really. I just kind of wanted to show you an idea of what it looks like when you're going through and using really any of the tacos to kind of take a look at automating your infrastructure as code so that you can do these dynamic environments and really take your development up to the next step. Because going through from a static environment, you're really going a lot slower than you could be if you jump through to dynamic environments.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. That was great. Great information. Great demo there. Let's see if anybody has any questions available. Give it a few minutes here.
Yeah, no worries.
Let's see here. There we go. I did put your YouTube, your Twitter and the website there so people can follow.
Awesome. So, thank you.
Yeah. But if anybody has any additional questions, I'm going to give it a few minutes for somebody to compose their questions there. I want to thank everybody.
Time speeds up here when we do things virtually versus being in the same room and getting the real feedback from people.
I know. Yeah, when it's virtual, everybody, it's like, when you're in the same room, it's easy to think up of some questions and they start looking and something they caught because it's in a bigger screen.
Yeah.
But other than that, what other companies, I guess, is N0 working with, kind of collaborating with?
So that's the beauty. As of right now, we have Terraform and we have Terragrunt workflows that you can run, but we are trying to keep a Switzerland approach or an agnostic approach to it. We don't want to be just the Terraform provider. We want to be all inclusive to infrastructure as code. And we also have what's called custom flows. So we have the ability to drop a YAML file inside of the repository where your Terraform files are. And with that, we can go through and run pretty much any commands you want inside our runtime, inside of our container, so that you can, you want to run Ansible on your code after you've deployed your infrastructure. You want to connect it to a security tool. Right now, I'm working with our friends over at Bridge Crew to do a security check inside of, one of our deploys. And with us, we do continuous deployment, but we are not like a CICD solution. We add a little bit more value onto a traditional CICD tool, because with them, like with the Jenkins or what have you, it's going to run the pipeline, it's going to dump your infrastructure out, and it's going to be done. It's all out. With us, not only do you get the deployment of it, we're actually going to do a little bit of day 2 plus operations on that, because we're going to keep a track of the entire application lifecycle from deploy to destroy. We're going to keep an eye on the costing of it. We're going to make sure that the RBAC is there. We're going to keep an eye out if there's, drift or anything like that. So we're really adding on a little bit of value onto that. So with that, we actually plug into any existing CI/CD solution. So if you want to utilize our CLI, you can go through and you can use Jenkins or GitLab or Circle CI or anybody to do your builds for CI, and then use us to actually do the CD plus the day 2, management of those environments.
And also on all cloud platforms as well, right?
Exactly right. Yeah. So with us, you can deploy anywhere that there's a Terraform or Terragrunt provider. When it comes to costing, we currently only have connection into the big 3 public clouds, but you can start to see some of that stuff change, pretty quickly. We're working as fast as possible to iterate and to get features out there. And if anybody's interested in seeing any other features or anything, let us know. We're always in for new feature requests. Right.
Also, you have like 4 different operating system clients, like for Mac, for Windows, for.
So we don't. We are right now a SaaS platform.
A SaaS. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. And no on-site, like on-premise.
You will see some kind of on-prem agents are in our future. What that looks like, I'm not quite sure yet. We've got several customers that are asking. What we do have the ability to do right now is that we can provide the IP address and security information for our runtime container. All of our runtime is in AWS. So if people do have on-prem resources or destinations that they want to deploy to, we can absolutely provide that information so it can be whitelisted into the firewall. And we've got a couple of customers that are doing that today. So we do have the ability to access on-prem, but we don't have any runtime agents currently.
Anything on public sector clouds? like for a government agency?
We do not currently have any GovCloud instances and stuff like that, but that's something that we'll be taking a look into here going forward.
Awesome.
If anybody's curious from a security standpoint, because we are a SaaS provider, we do have our SOC 2 Type 2 report that's available. Awesome. So if anybody's security team needs the warm and fuzzies, we can always, set up a call and get you a copy of that.
Definitely. Yeah. Security is always on top of everybody's mind.
Absolutely. And I know it's kind of a big deal, especially with the space that we're in, because you do need to provide your secrets, like your AWS keys and things like that. So people get a little, unnerved about handing their keys over to a SaaS provider, and that's absolutely understandable. So we do everything we possibly can to mitigate any of those risks, and we can provide that SOC 2 Type 2 report for you.
Awesome. Well, I think we may gonna call it an early night because I don't see anybody else posting any questions. Let me look at my phone here. I don't see anything there. So yeah, I think it's going to be an early night, and I appreciate everybody that joined this video. If you want to watch it again, will be available on our DevOps Live YouTube channel. Let me see. I had posted it there somewhere earlier. It's on youtube.com/users DevOps Live meetup. So yeah, DevOps Live, not the meetup. So just DevOps Live. So yeah. Let's I guess we're going to call it a night, and I thank you, Tim, very much for showing us this presentation and demo. And if anybody has any questions, Tim has his DMs are open. You could send him a message.
Please do. I'm here,
and he'll be happy to help you out. Okay, thank you everyone for joining.
Mike.
Okay.